Hey everyone, welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. With me now is Diane Kaiser, who is a former pro soccer player turned functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, courage coach, and holistic beauty expert. She's been through an enormous amount of struggles in her life, and with empathy and fierce leadership, she is your go-to girl to break through anything, no matter what you've tried or what you've been told. She created the Cleanse, Heal, Ignite holistic health certification and warrior detox programs which help women use the power of intuition to discover their inner healer by providing them lifelong tools to reverse autoimmune disease, breast implant illness, hormonal imbalance, chronic pain, gut infections, emotional trauma, and perfectionism. After becoming a certified toxicity and detox specialist, she founded the CHI or CHI Functional Telemedicine Clinic in 2012 and has supported thousands of women all around the world to overcome physical, emotional, and medical roadblocks that they never thought possible. She's the author of Killer Breasts, creator of the Explant Solution, producer of the Non-Toxic Beauty Summit, and the 10-part Dying to Be Beautiful docuseries to inspire women everywhere to embrace their natural beauty and hot masterpiece life with love, laughter, and liberation. So welcome, Diane. Such a pleasure to connect with you.
Hey, thanks, Ari. That seems like a long description, but I guess it's because I've been through a myriad things, right?
So one thing is I would like you to show the book cover for your book, Killer Breast, which I just mentioned, which is, I think, one of the best book covers I've ever seen. I think you just nailed it with the title of that book and the cover with the bombs. For those who are listening and can't see this, it's like a picture of a girl with a bra and two big, sort of like cartoon looking bombs in the bra. And the book is called Killer Breasts, Overcoming Breast Implant Illness. Okay, yeah. So I want to talk a lot about female beauty. And this is something that I've never really talked about on this podcast before. So I'm going to let you do most of the talking. Mm-hmm. I want to know, I know there are some polls out there of women that have found this huge percentage of women don't feel beautiful or don't consider themselves to be beautiful. Why is it? Why is it that we have an epidemic? Maybe that word is being overused right now, but an epidemic of women who don't feel beautiful. Isn't that odd? Particularly from an evolutionary vantage point. I mean, it makes me wonder, well, what percentage of women in a hunter-gatherer context 1,000 years ago, when asked that question, would have responded, no, I don't feel beautiful. And if there is a difference between those two percentages, and maybe there are some hunter-gatherers we could poll today to find out, but I don't know if anyone's done that. But assuming there is some kind of a discrepancy there, what do you think are the main factors behind that?
Yes, great question. It's a great place to start too, right? Is it the root? Because if one simply says, well, breast implants and Botox and beauty toxins are very bad for the biological body and they destroy a woman's immune system and in many cases are causing autoimmune disease, you might think that would be enough for someone to say, oh, well, if they're bad for my body, then I'm not going to do it. But it's actually not happening that way. It's women are still addicted to this perfection prison that we have been enslaved in because of our culture. I mean, it is absolutely our culture. It's what's happening on social media. It's the compare and the compete paradigm. And it is the ego's job to constantly beat you up, to remind you that you're not beautiful, but it's not our own essence. This is not natural beauty. This is not what this is. This is, if you can imagine, just a goddess gremlin that's contaminated our bodies. And some would actually call it Wetiko. If you look at the Native Americans, they actually believe in a dark spirit called Wetiko. And it is one that has absolutely perverted its way into all of our minds and has caused the root of chasing this perfection carrot that is, I call it the toxic treadmill or the trauma treadmill. Women tend to want to hide from what we are afraid of, which is criticism. It's absolutely hearing. It's not hearing that we're beautiful. I mean, it's like men with their hair, or men with what's happening down there, the size of things. And our whole culture has predicated our feeling like we even matter, or the value of our existence on our appearance. So it's simple for me to say this, and it's simple for everybody to look at like that. But there's a lot of even younger generations now, they've never even known what natural beauty truly is. They've never been taught. And I think that our generation was that last generation that teetered from nature to the hyper awareness of competition that is social media, right? And I've traveled to 27 countries, and I've seen what other people would say, like in India. They say, oh, before I went there in 2012, people said, oh my God, Diane, you're going to die there. It's so ugly in India. And I'm like, well, I beg to differ. Have you ever seen any pictures of Kerala? Have you seen any pictures of, the different beaches that they have in India? Have you been to what I define as beauty is the shadow and light aspects and the polarities colliding, and learning to appreciate both of them? And what we have been taught in Western medicine is to run away from our darkness. And I believe that the beauty dysmorphic perfection prison is us running away from the dark aspects that we have inherited as far as belief systems, that you're not beautiful unless you're perfect. And we run away from that darkness by perfecting it, instead of acknowledging those voices that are really the parasites that could keep us in that prison.
So tell me again, what was your definition of beauty?
Yeah, natural beauty. I mean, I'm looking out right now at, I live in Sedona, which I believe is the quintessential definition of true beauty and power, especially feminine presence. And I'm looking out at Thunder Mountain right now. And to me, in all of its imperfections and in the rocks and the layers, this is true beauty. And true beauty, that's outside of ourselves, right? So what we see outside of ourselves is a direct reflection of what we observe within ourselves. And I know a lot of people might hear this and go, oh, it's so much easier said than done. And I get it, because I went through that journey. And I always say, thank God for breast implants, because they woke me up and they taught me what true beauty was not, by feeling how dead and ugly I felt inside because of how much they contaminated my natural beauty and my soul. It was like a betrayal of self to do anything to my body that was not me and was not my natural evolution of aging and embracing the wrinkles as wisdom. And I know that a lot of people don't want to hear that. They still don't want to hear that, because we have been so culturally conditioned. But to me, true beauty is any human, but especially in a woman, is a woman who could look at the wisdom in her body and the miles that her body has been through, and she embraces all of it, and she does it with courage, and she flips the bird to what Kardashian or any other artificial beauty leader would say that we need to do to continue to purchase things to buy our beauty. And instead, we can look inside and go, what is unique about me? What is so different about me that nobody else has? And can still look in the mirror and reprogram and unwire and unlearn what we've been taught that beauty is. That is, it takes so much courage to do that. It takes so much courage to go against the grain. And I think that beauty is also service from our hearts, which is actually what's behind these toxic breast implants that are filled with 30 plus heavy metals and carcinogens and things that people have no idea that are in them. They think it's just a bunch of silicone and saline, but it's not. And those things block our heart chakra. So it makes it difficult for us to truly connect energetically, because those frequencies are blocked with those toxins. So it takes a true woman of courage to say, I don't care what that world says. Audrey Hepburn and a lot of these other women who have said, I'm embracing my own natural beauty. And then the competitive women out there go, well, it's so easy for her to embrace that beauty because she was beautiful. Well, let's sit down and make a list of all the things that you think is beautiful about you. Let's start from your heart. And if there are certain things that you need to fix you don't like about yourself, then, do that in the most natural way possible. So I'm not saying that, working on improving your appearance is a bad thing. It's just how we've been taught to go about it. And it's more about covering up our perceived imperfections. That's what I want to talk about today. And that's what I'm in a mission to share.
Got it. So That's a really beautiful definition and kind of philosophy and paradigm and way of looking at beauty. I wonder, well, like, and I know you kind of alluded to this with your own breast implant story, but what is the sort of deeper personal story that led you to this path?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm no different than any one of you out there. First of all, any woman out there. I grew up playing with Barbies. And I grew up with a lot of the same pressures. And Baywatch, one of those actresses actually became a client of mine, ironically, and was one woman that I idolized as a probably 17, 18-year-old. And then she later became a client. And I was looking at the other side of this going, wow, now I'm helping her remove her breast implants.
Mhm.
So um, I'm no different from her. I'm no different than, I'm not a mom, but I know a lot of mothers and I work with a lot of celebrities and health leaders. They're appalled to share this, Ari, that they've gone through this story. They've gone through this journey. They're embarrassed just like me that I got these things to win. And when I really look back at it, I was a bikini competitor. I know not everybody does that, but I do things in extremes. And I was a soccer player, professional soccer player. And of course, after I got my breast implants, that kind of threw that off on the field because they're about 5 pounds. They're not just 1 pound each. Then there's the inflammation around them. And so they destroy your spine. And that's what happened to me is I already had some spinal issues, as I think everybody does at this point from sitting so much, right? And from forward head tilt to look at our phones all day and improper posture and lack of movement, lack of circulation, lack of proper ATP, cellular regeneration, all the things that you talk about, right?
Mhm.
So I got them because as a competitor, you're trained to do whatever it takes to win. And I think that is exactly how our culture is. It's whatever it takes to win, bigger, badder, faster, stronger. And that applies to breasts also.
Mhm.
And so I got them because I was competing and I was told that the only way that I would become a pro card earner in the bikini competitions I was in, which was the NPC, is I had to get breast implants. And
Mhm.
there was that had to, right? So I might say, well, I had to win. And I always challenge anybody who uses that terminology of I had to. I had no other choice. I was forced to. There's always another choice. But when we're not curious about what that other choice is, we move into that victim consciousness that says whatever whatever I'm told to do, I have to do in order to have whatever it is that our ego, usually it's our ego, is so destined to have, because it means it will matter. If I win, then I matter. If I win, then I become, and in my mind, then it was, well, I have nothing down here. I was 10% body fat. And I looked down and I laughed one day. That day I happened to win, to qualify for Cal State in the nationals. So I said, well, I guess now that I won, overall figure, then I need to get breast implants to win overall pro. So
Mhm.
it was a whatever I needed to do. So I started shopping for boobs that day because it became, God, I'll never forget this too, Ari, looking back.
I wish when I was a teenager, someone would have told me it was that easy to get boobs. All I had to do was just go shop for them. My life would
Yeah,
have been so
right.
much easier and all the frustration would have gone away. You could have saved me so much frustration.
Yeah. I know that it's like, sorry that no one told you that, Ari. Sorry that you were a
Yeah.
victim of no one telling you the truth, right? And it is that easy. And that's that's part of the problem, is that I lived in Orange County at the time. And in Orange County, I call it Plastic County because a lot of even the lawns are fake. It's such a beautiful town, but there's a lot of very fake people that are
Mhm.
covering up a lot of things to compete. And it really is at the root of all of this. And many women might be in denial about this, but at the heart of it, it really is about competing against one another to win whatever it is that we think we need to win. So
Yeah.
I went shopping for boobs and I looked around at all the women who I liked the shapes of them in their bikinis or in their dresses. Did you do silicone or saline, or did you do over the muscle or under the muscle? And how big did you go? Which doctor did you use? There's all of those questions. And I got a lot of feedback, but I ended up getting 500 cc's instead of the 350 that I went in originally wanting. I was convinced that my rib cage was bigger, that I needed, if I wanted to have a cleavage. I was insecure because I had uneven sized breasts too. My cleavage was wide apart. So I already had a lot of those insecurities even before going into the bikini field. But then Any model, you talk to any model, you talk to any woman who is judged based on their beauty, which is all women at this point, then you're going to find a woman that's going to pick her body apart, and one surgery leads to another that leads to another, and it will never be enough. And that's right. That's where I ended up.
Mhm. Yeah, my wife was a fashion model for 20 years, and then transitioned. So since she was maybe 16 years old or something like that, and then she made a transition, which was around the time I met her. She was transitioning out of modeling into being a chef, and I can tell you from being around her and from also being around a lot of her model friends, there is, you're with these people who are on the surface, to most people, very, very beautiful people, and yet there are the same, if not worse, deep-seated insecurities around every minor perceived imperfection that they feel so insanely insecure about. So it exists everywhere, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of men that are perpetuating this problem too. Right. And I wouldn't say that it's their fault either. None of this is any of our fault. We've all been raised with the same amount of shame. I mean, that is the bottom line, is shame about self and not being perfect. And we're
Yeah.
so afraid to reveal our imperfections because our culture has absolutely made fools of us, and starting from a very young age. And bullying is pervasive everywhere. And men are taught that, I matter more when I have a woman with big boobs. And I'm not saying this for everybody, but I've heard, if you were to pull back the curtain, and all of the women that I've worked with, from now, it's been in over 17 countries all around the world, and hearing a lot of the stories from their own husbands, or their employers, or the doctors, it's absolute disgusting what they're experiencing and what the doctors are saying to them. It's a level of dismissal that is very narcissistic.
Mhm.
And this is also what the doctors have been trained to. These doctors have been trained that, oh, it's not your breast implants. It's just all anecdotal, and it's just all in your head. I went to 11 doctors before I decided on working with the surgeon that I said yes to remove mine. And I have a very long list, and the things that I'll share with you later, if women are looking for resources on this, the top two questions I get is, what doctor should I work with? And what are the questions I should ask them? And I have all of that in my resources, because I was lost when I went through this. There wasn't anything like this created when I went through it. And what I want to impart upon everybody too, is that having a great doctor that believes that breast implant illness is real is number one. And then working with them and understanding, having them have a level of understanding as to what that could look like is important, and that it's a priority enough of theirs to remind them and to recommend somebody to help them cleanse their body afterwards. Because these and we'll get into that, but breast implants are absolutely toxic, and they all bleed, and some of them rupture. Some of them are just train wrecks inside the body, and these things bleed all over the place. But for every woman, from day one of implantation, these implants are gel bleeding throughout the body in micro levels. And what that looks like is the Pacific Ocean. I always say that the Pacific Ocean, if you look at in between Hawaii and California, there's a big waste basket of trash, and it's a lot of plastic. And for me, that is as above, so below. We are in symbiotic connection with nature. That is Mother Nature's breast implants. It takes thousands of years for plastic to biodegrade, and it's no different for the toxic chemicals in breast implants. They don't just leave the body when you explant the breast implants. There's a lot of irrigation to do thereafter, and that's why a lot of women still don't feel their best even after explant.
So I'm tempted to go in two directions. One is I'll go in a personal direction first, and then I want to jump back to breast implants. So on a personal level, you mentioned men, and I want to share that for me personally, I was kind of indoctrinated into the world of fitness and bodybuilding from a very young age, from the time I was 12, 13 years old. And part of that was my older brother was 5 years older, was very into bodybuilding, was like an aspiring bodybuilder and a personal trainer. And of course, I wanted to be like Big Brother. So, I grew up from a very young age worshiping Arnold Schwarzenegger and all the other bodybuilders of that day of the 90s and early 2000s. Guys like Ronnie Coleman and Flex Wheeler and many others. And there is a massive amount of comparison that you're constantly doing, and you're constantly looking at other men and kind of sizing them up. Who's the fittest guy, the buffest guy in this gym? How lean are you? How ripped are you? And all of this, for many years I was one of the guys in the best physical condition, outside of the few guys who were very serious bodybuilders who were actually on steroids. And then actually something happened, and I'd say in the last 10 years, which is that steroids have become rampant. Steroids have become extremely common because with the rise of the internet and lots of businesses, it became very, very easy to just order steroids. It used to be back in the 70s, 80s, 90s that in order to get steroids, you had to like connect with some guy in a dark corner and, in the locker room of a gym and do this kind of deal under the table. And now in the internet age, you can just go on a site, click a few buttons and get it shipped to your door. It's illegal, but there's easy ways of doing it. So it's become rampant. And I went through this phase where my ego was still very attached to being sort of the fittest, one of the best physiques in the gym apart from the steroid guys. And then steroid guys became much more common. And then I became much more of an average Joe in terms of the gym environment, where I didn't stand out as much anymore. And that was a thing for me to have to, as part of my own development, to have to gain self-confidence and appreciation of self separate from the physique that I had grown up, with that being so central since the time I was 12 years old. So I think it's probably not as bad for men as it is for women, but definitely, men have that too, and big struggles with body dysmorphia and always feeling inadequate, and then the desire to go over that edge and actually start doing steroids, and then oftentimes that creates worse body dysmorphia issues, and it's a mess. How have we gotten ourselves into such a mess?
Yeah, I know. And I was in that too, Ari. Thanks for being vulnerable about your experience too, because it impacts all of us. This is not just a journey about breast implants. This is a journey about body dysmorphia and beauty dysmorphia, and us constantly feeling addicted. It truly is an addiction. Like you said, there is a point after which it's hard to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And for women, it's the breast implants. For men, it's the muscles, right? It's all about just inflating physical body parts to inflate the ego.
Yeah.
And it's an artificial sense of self. If we look around at the world right now, what isn't fake that's not destroying our world?
Mm-hmm.
And the steroids, the heart palpitating weight loss medications that I took, there was a 2-week time period that I did whatever it took. And I did the steroids for 2 weeks. I did T3. I did, the Anavar. And I felt like a truck hit me every single morning. And what I brought this to my coach and I said, sure, I can do 80 pounds tricep press and I can do them forever, but I feel like hell. I feel bloated. I feel inflamed. I'm in pain. And he said, you going to keep complaining about this, or do you want your pro card? And okay. And then I still kept going back because whatever it takes, right? So that was when I go back and really think about who owned me at that point. It was not myself. It was not God. It was this coach. And I showed up another day to train, and I can't remember what it was, but he had said, Diane, I own you on that stage. You will do what I tell you to do. You will color your hair the color that we want you to. You will not wear that in your hair. And there was a part of me at that time that was so lost within myself that I still kept doing whatever it took. But then after I lost to the next show, which was my Cal State show, and I got 11th out of 13th, And I got reamed by my coaches walking off stage. That's when I quit. That for me was my wake up call. That's when I said, I'm going to become a yoga teacher. I'm going to meditate. Then I travel the world. I'm like, who the hell am I? Like, seriously, who am I? If I don't, why did I give myself away so easily? And that's when I traveled to, India and Brazil and Thailand. And I said to myself, and this is what I encourage everybody to do. This is how I found my own courage. And this is why I call myself the courage coach, because it took a hell of a lot of courage for me to say, I am no longer going to be enslaved to what anybody else tells me to do because they own me. I am the only one that owns this temple. And I answer to one person, that's God. I didn't have a reclamation that night, but I went and I said, I'm going to do everything that scares me that I can think to do. And I traveled the world, and I got scuba diving certified, and I swam with bull sharks, and that's the most dangerous shark in the world. And I went and I walked around in the Amazon at midnight with a guide in the middle of the jungle and got stalked by a black panther. And I just kept doing things that scared the crap out of me. But then I kept going, well, I lived through that, and I lived through that, and I lived through that. And I realized that courage is beauty, having the courage to follow your own intuition and get super curious about what your body is trying to say and the symptoms that you have. That is what beauty is to me. And and also it's giving each other the permission to have freedom for ourselves and not judging each other for not people pleasing, because I think at the root of all of this, it's not just the breast implants, it's a metaphor. The root of all of this, Ari, is people pleasing. And here we are in the craziest, most tumultuous transition of our world. And people are angry at others for not people pleasing and caving to their fears. And so it's such a metaphor for everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to come back to breast implants. So you mentioned breast implant illness.
Yeah.
And you also alluded to the fact that this is somewhat of a controversial concept or diagnosis within mainstream medicine. There seem to be some doctors who believe in it, some who don't. What is the state of the actual scientific evidence on this topic? And I'm asking this genuinely ignorant. Oftentimes I ask questions because I'm trying to invite the person to educate. And I also have a deep education. In this case, I have no education. I've never looked at any study on the topic. So tell me what studies are out there on this topic, if any, and what have they found?
Great question. Okay, let's get into the science, or the science that does even exist that has not been burned. So, which there's not a lot. And I'll tell you that when I first started all of this research about 3 years ago, when I did my thermography and I saw massive inflammation pockets around my breasts, and I felt the lumps around my breasts, I wondered if I was killing myself and whether or not it was worth it to die to be beautiful. And I started doing a lot of the research and working with a lot of very well-known doctors, researchers, clinicians on this topic. And what I found is that if you haven't seen the movie yet, what's it called? It's the one about the implants. There has been no studies, and this is what this whole documentary Bleeding Edge talked about too. So Bleeding Edge is the name of the documentary. Is what studies have actually been done on breast implants. And when I did the research, I dug up, the answer was none. There was no long-term studies done on breast implants. It's similar to birth control, where they have asked questions such as with women who have been doing birth control. So they asked people who have been in the clinical trials, tell me about your experience with birth control. And then they might say something like extreme weight gain, hot flashes, I feel I have no more sex drive. And then the person conducting the study says, well, have you been pregnant? They say no. And the person corrects them and says, so then yes, the birth control is effective. And the person is saying, yes, it's been effective, but I've been miserable. So the same thing started happening when they did a big study. And they had over 100,000 women in this study. And it was done in another country. You can't find any information anymore on this study. There's little pockets, little paragraphs that talk about it. But what they found is that breast implants can cause cancer of the immune system. It's called ALCL, which is a rare type of blood cancer. And so far now we've got close to 1,000 women who have had breast implants that have had this type of cancer. Some will say, oh, only breast implants that are the smooth or the textured silicone are the ones causing BIA ALCL, because that's caused by breast implants. That's what BIA ALCL stands for. And some would say, well, only those ones that have been recalled for that reason are causing any problems. And that is actually not so, because the big study that they found with over 100,000 women, they found that there has been up to a 800% increased risk of autoimmune disease. A lot of that being Sjogren's disease, a lot of it also having, Raynaud's, losing your sensation in the fingers, Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis. They've also found that there was a 3 times increased incidence of women losing their babies. So they had stillbirths. They also found that there was a 3 times higher risk of suicide and depression. They've also found that there was over a 3 times issue with women who are breastfeeding that cannot produce milk. And I say these things because this was found in this massive study. This was the study that was supposed to have been handed over to the researchers and to the manufacturers of these breast implants, but they cut it short before the 10 years was up because of all of these findings, and they buried the research. So when I was doing a lot of my research myself and decided to write this book, Killer Breasts, I found a lot of information on that study. And when I went to go back to find those articles, because they're referenced in several of my blog pages, people were saying, Diane, there wasn't anything there, or there was only a couple paragraphs. And you referenced that there was a lot of data in that blog page, and it was gone. Even on the Wayback Machine, I couldn't even access it.
Wow.
So they've been burying this information. I have several different podcast episodes, which you guys can go follow, on other women who have been speaking up that are big proponents to help women understand the implications of breast implants after you have a mastectomy, after breast cancer. It is adding insult to injury. And the manufacturers, the doctors, the surgeons, are not properly warning people. And now they're saying, yes, there is a black box warning on breast implants, but there's not a lot of disclosure, and there's not a lot of education with these surgeons, because they also have been brainwashed just like we have. I could go on, but behind the scenes, not just with these studies, I have seen every one of these issues that I've mentioned: lupus after a woman's breast implants ruptured, suicide in a woman. She was about to commit suicide. Her baby would not receive her milk, and he kept turning away from her nipples. And when we did a side-by-side case analysis of her gut, looking at her GI map and what's happening in her microbes and her digestive tract and the function there, which 80% of your immune system is reported to be in your digestive tract, we found the same gnarly opportunistic gut bugs and pathogens in her GI map than the baby's. And the baby had all sorts of inflammatory markers. The baby was already struggling with leaky gut. And this is a 6-month-old baby. So you can imagine the things I've been seeing behind closed doors, and it's breast implants and more. And a lot of the markers have gone down since detoxing women's bodies after their breast implants were removed. And so there isn't a lot of research on this. You're not going to hear a doctor when you go in to see your natural doctor, or even your Western medicine trained doctor. They're not trained on breast implant illness, which is why I wrote this book as well, because it is not necessarily a thing that they want to admit, because then they therefore would then have to go back and admit fault to the millions of women who have gotten breast implants, which now we think is about 10% of the population.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as far as doctor perception of this, what is there a sort of breakdown of, is it 1 out of 10? Is it 1 out of 2, plastic surgeons that believe, based on the reports of their patients, that this is true? Or what would you say as far as that perception?
Good question. It's a really good question. So when I was doing this research myself, and I went to 11 surgeons before working with the 11th one, about half of the doctors, half of the surgeons didn't acknowledge breast implant illness as a thing. Most of them said it was anecdotal, and there wasn't enough research out there yet. That was 3 years ago. So what I would say now is that if you look at surgeons who are specifically and mostly focusing on explanting, every one of those doctors, for the most part, acknowledges that breast implant illness is an actual thing because they have seen enough of it over the years. There are now the doctors who still refuse to acknowledge it as an issue, who are getting sued because of the major issues that a lot of women are experiencing when they go into work with that doctor, and they wake up and they haven't had the capsules removed. The things that they had asked for, the doctor did not get completed. And this has been happening for a very long time, a long time. A lot of surgeons have been putting double Ds or 500 cc's into women when they asked for 350, and they miraculously woke up with bigger breasts. And the woman, when she inquired, he said, or she said, well, these ones, look better for your frame. So I made a decision when you were under to, put bigger ones inside of you. This happens often. So I would say that based on my own experience working with women all around the world on this topic, that about 25% maybe of surgeons who are plastic surgeons would even acknowledge the existence of BII. There are probably maybe only about 2 to 5% who even understand what breast implant illness truly is, how a woman suffers, how to go into her tissues and remove the breast implants, remove the capsule, as well as to know how to properly irrigate all the tissues around it, because this toxic material does leak into other parts of the body.
Got it. I want to switch gears into something else, but I want to make sure that I don't neglect anything on this topic. Do you feel there's anything else important? I mean, I'm sure that you could probably talk for 2 hours on just this topic alone, but is there anything else important that's worth mentioning, maybe specifically to women who have breast implants, who are, maybe are struggling with certain symptoms and have never even considered whether they might be coming from the implant, and maybe now are, wanting to look into that or consider explant surgery? Is there anything that they should know?
Yeah. I would say for a big one is, and I talk about a lot of myths in my book, which I'll talk to you guys about how to get my book next. And it's not just a book for women who have breast implants or not. It's a woman who desires to discover and uncover and recover her natural beauty. First half of the book is on breast implants. The second half is on all of those other things. I have 8 myths in this book. And a big one is that, breast implants only affect a certain percentage of the population. They only impact women who have a predisposition to autoimmune disease. And I say that with air quotes, but I have a belief that autoimmune disease now is rampant no matter your genetics, because we are swimming in hundreds of thousands of toxins and poisonous chemicals that impact us. And I see a lot of women who are doing a lot of cleansing of their livers or their colons, and they're taking clean supplements, and maybe they even switch to clean beauty products and cosmetics. But this was me, as I was doing all of these healthy things. I spent tens of thousands of dollars on biohacks and saunas and coffee enema kits and castor oil packs and ozone machines. And then here I am with these toxic breast implants. And that's why my book looks like these, beauty bombs.
Mm-hmm.
They're beauty bombs, and they live inside of you, and they're constantly bleeding, and they are a ticking time bomb. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because no matter if you have autoimmune disease in your history or not, your immune system looks at these things and goes, they're non-native. These are non-DNA. And so the proof that we have that there's always an autoimmune component to every woman who gets these things is there is a capsule built around the breast implants. The body is so intelligent that it knows they're dangerous, and they wall them off so that your own tissues are protected from them as much as possible. So if they do rupture or break or bleed or whatever happens to them, then the toxins inside of them don't leave that capsule. And what happens, a lot of doctors who don't know what they're doing in that surgery, they will not remove the capsule. They'll leave that dead tissue in, and the woman will continue to have problems. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And there are many other options for you. If you have a mastectomy, if you're insecure about saggy breasts or uneven breasts, or if you don't have breasts at all, there are so many more options today, like fat transfer that I talk about in my book. And fat transfer is when you remove fat from one part of your body and put it into, let's say, building a new set of breasts. I don't necessarily recommend it when you have an explant, because it's already a lot of work for the body to recover from an explant surgery. So there are so many other ways that you could rebuild your body, but above all, loving on yourself and your imperfections is the one most challenging one that we have today, but that is where we're headed. And we're teaching our little daughters, we're teaching them with every decision that we make, and they know the difference. And so if you have breast implants and if you're breastfeeding, also know that that's a hazard for the child. And I highly recommend, if you want to get pregnant someday, then get these things out before you even start to build your nest, because they can cause a lot of problems. And the baby is drinking in whatever the remnants are that are leaking from your breast implants. It's a small amount of gel bleed, but it's different for each person. I could go on and on about that, but just know there is a lot more options than you think.
So we have all of that concern, and then women are getting into their 40s and 50s. They're having wrinkles, gray hairs, all these things I just mentioned. And there is a natural sort of cultural response to, dye your hair and get Botox and, whatever, get maybe liposuction, or, do whatever you need surgically, get a facelift, and, do all these things surgically, or even simple things that are very minor, like Botox, like dyeing your hair to get rid of the grays. And there is, I know I've watched my wife kind of struggle with, for example, the gray hairs, and having a desire to kind of be like, well, I'm just going to embrace it. I've seen certain women that have a head full of gray hair and it looks beautiful. And, why fight it? Why do we, kind of annoyed at this culture that needs to fight these natural signs of aging at all times? And I generally, and then sometimes she'll give into it, she'll dye her hair, and then, whatever else. And I also see her struggling, like she has a little bit of a couple wrinkles on her face that really annoy her and make her feel insecure, that she wish she didn't have. And so there's this struggle back and forth, right? Maybe I should just be more natural and embrace, these signs of aging, but I'm also surrounded by a culture, by so many people who don't feel the same, and who, maybe look at me differently. They don't look at me the same as when I was younger, because I have more wrinkles, because I have more gray hairs. And so there's this tug of war that's occurring in people around that. What are your thoughts on that? Because on the one hand, it could be just solved by saying, hey, this is natural, just embrace it. But on the other hand, if you do that, then there is, that can make all those insecurities then rise up much stronger, and people may not feel as good about themselves as if they did the Botox or did the hair dyeing or facelift or whatever other things, or breast implants or whatever else makes them feel insecure. So yeah. What are your thoughts more broadly on that tug of war?
Yeah. I think that there is a meeting in the middle. I absolutely think that, because we can't change our programming. We have absolutely been programmed that we need these things for survival. Our ego wants so badly to be perfect and to not be looked at like we are anything other than. And so we have gotten to this place where we are paralyzed to be anything other than perfect. But the paradox is that we are actually paralyzing our organs when we're taking things like Botox that paralyze our muscles to make it appear as though we are younger than we are. And it really is tricking no one. Everyone's going to do what they're going to do. And look, I still look back and I think, thank God for Botox and breast implants and beauty toxins and the bully within, because they woke me up. I made these choices subconsciously from the programming that many of us don't even realize it's back there, that these are the billboards that are still flashing in front of us. Like I have to have the hair like her, and that's the part of social media that everybody's putting out their best foot, but who is actually showing the behind the scenes struggle? And there's not many people. And that's why I think social media is a big part of this to detox from. Any way that we judge others outside of self is how we're judging ourselves inside. And if we're looking around thinking that other people are looking at us and that I need to perfect this, it's probably the same way that we're judging other people when we see their imperfections. So there's a part of us that I don't think that it's a good idea, like you said, to ignore any voice. I think when a voice comes up like that, it's good to sit with it, just like you would have a 10-year-old daughter come up to you and say, Daddy, I think I should get breast implants. Or mommy, I want to get Botox. And this is happening for a lot of parents now whose 15-year-olds are asking for Botox and injectables. These are 15-year-old kids. And I mean, teachers come up to me, ask me to speak at high schools because this is happening at such an early age now. And so it's a conversation that we could have within these parts of us that are afraid to be imperfect. What did it mean when we were imperfect as a kid? How did we get in trouble? How did we get traumatized? And get to reparent ourselves. We get to reparent ourselves in ways that we didn't learn how. So it really is getting support from from others who've been down this path before. And I always say, when you're going to work with somebody to help you free yourself from these toxins and trauma, you work with somebody who has empathy, education, and experience. If you're working with somebody who's never had breast implants and, a doctor who's maybe never had breast implants, they've never been through the journey of what it feels like to go through BII. They've never really understood what it feels like to face our shame and sit with it and reprogram how we talk to ourselves. I always say that illness is two things trapped in the body: toxins and trauma. But Western medicine, as it's known today, was created by Rockefeller to poison the body with petroleum-loaded pharmaceuticals, which numb symptoms then that serves as the trap to imprison the root cause as it festers inside, killing the host. And it's the same. It's no different for beauty toxins. It is absolutely no different. We are paralyzing our shame by caving into it instead of looking at ourselves in the mirror differently. And what I would say to, we're healthy replacements. So that's the trauma aspect, right? Is the self-talk and the self-love. And then there's the self-care. And is a wrinkle showing up, or like 11s, like you're talking about with your wife? That's what started me with Botox too, is I had these 11s whenever I looked angry and I didn't want to look like that anymore. So I did Botox, and over 3 years of doing it 3 times, it wasn't just one time. It was the accumulation of these things. These things travel and take a long time to leave the body. Injectables don't really leave a lot of injectables don't even leave the body. And Botox, what it does is it paralyzes that part of the body. On the black box warning, it says that it spreads. Med spa owners lied to me and multiple people and say, no, it just stays right there. But it says on the label it spreads. So what Botox is doing, and you get to be the judge of this, and then I'm going to give you a healthy alternative, because there are so many healthy alternatives to work with your wrinkles too, in the physical realm, not just the emotional realm of accepting and loving who you are as you are. Easier said than done, right? Because of our programming. So there's a way to work with it. Botox is made of a few different things, but most people don't even know that it has human albumin in it. So there's a lot of vegans or a lot of religious people who would never get blood, but they don't know, that Jehovah's Witnesses don't even know that there's blood in Botox. It's human albumin. And botulinum toxin was actually used in the Gulf War to paralyze and kill the troops. That's how it ended up, just like everything else does really in our pharmaceutical world. It was used in war to control troops. And then it ended up being that they discovered it for another reason. And if you look at Botox illness and you measure that next to Gulf War syndrome, the symptoms are identical. And it also works with a lot of women. They have a lot of neurological issues on their face. It does travel, and it travels to the digestive tract, and it paralyzes the migrating motor complex. So women start to get constipated, and they're like, I don't know why I'm all of a sudden so constipated. And they start doing all the things. They add things, right? They add things thinking, oh, well, I'm going to take some senna, or I'm going to take more probiotics, or I'm going to do more coffee enemas. People ask the question, what do I do? But here's the question of, what do I undo? Having an understanding that Botox was actually used for war purposes. And so too is glyphosate, which is another paralyzing agent that is in all of our processed foods at this point. When you have glyphosate and you have Botox together, talk about a recipe for a constipation disaster. And the toxins get backed up and stored in the body. They get trapped. They can't leave. And toxins and trauma always stay together. So where there's more toxins stored, there's trauma. So instead of those things, I recommend considering things like microdermabrasion or dermal rolling, copper and collagen peptides. You could also do PRP. I have a couple different podcasts you guys can listen to where I talk about these things. PRP is another really powerful thing that you can do, and you can inject them around your face, and it does some lifting, because Botox is known that it only lasts 3 to 6 months. And once you start it, you got to use more and more and more over time. And now women are invested in this $3,000 to $6,000 per year addiction. And when you stop, oftentimes it's hard to go back and fix the damage that it causes. A lot of women get more wrinkles from using Botox because they end up itching a lot, like I did. And then because there's so much itching and bleeding, then because of how much you end up itching, then you have to go back and fix that problem. So there are so many other things that you can be doing, zinc, collagen, healthy levels of progesterone, making sure you have healthy levels of zinc to make progesterone. There's things that you can eat your beauty from the inside out. You know, bone broth is absolutely amazing. Hydration. So many of the med spa owners that I've interviewed that are natural and holistic beauty practitioners now, the number one thing that they talk about with their patients that they are is dehydration. They're dehydrated and they're drinking dead water with reverse osmosis, doesn't have any minerals in it. And stop drinking water from plastic because you want to toxify your skin, get some BPA in your body. So there's a lot more to this. It's not just about what to add, it's about what to take away as well.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so first of all, this has been awesome. Thank you. I really enjoyed it, even though we're technically mostly talking about women's beauty. I think a lot of it is applicable to men, as I kind of mentioned earlier. I didn't even anticipate that I would make that connection going into this, but as you were talking, I went, well, actually, I can see a lot of these parallels in my own life. But I really enjoyed this. This is a novel and I think really important conversation to be had, and for things to be out in the open, and for people to think about this. And are these kind of cultural narratives serving us? And to what extent do we need to do the work, which is often very hard work, to help ourselves break free of these cultural narratives and think differently about how we relate to ourselves, our own physical beauty? Can you wrap up by talking about your maybe top 2 or top 3 things that you want to leave people with?
Yeah, as far as things that they can do in their life to start to baby step. Yeah. And I'm all about, if you're going to take a step, have it be a big lever that moves a lot of things. So where you can really see and feel the difference. And so the first thing is, there's a couple things gifts for your audience too, that I want to share. And it really is asking yourself the question, it's so cliche, but who are the top 5 people that I surround myself with the most? And what I mean by that is also, and I want to take this even deeper than not just who am I surrounding myself with right now in my life, but the voices in my own head that are driving me to make these unconscious, unhealthy choices. Whose voices are those? Where did they originate? Is it a commercial? Where was the first time that you felt like you were ugly as you were? Who made fun of you? Who was the bully? Because those traumatic experiences in our lives, they get buried when we don't know how to cope with them or reframe them. Our parents didn't have these tools most of the time. So you're not a victim of your parents. You're a victim of yourself, of this non-self bully within, until you can actually sit down and reparent yourself in another way. So really understanding where these voices are coming from. Yes, we all have voices in our head, and where are they coming from? It's not just the top 5 people around your life now, because you could have an amazing husband like Ari saying, no, but honey, you're so beautiful. Like, what? I don't understand your obsession. And it's not Ari. It's not Ari's job. It's not your partner's job to make you feel like you're beautiful. It's yours. And so first understanding that shadow aspect of self, that is what to undo. Right? That is the undoing process. It's unlearning that belief system. So that's so big. And then where do you live? I lived in Orange County. There's so much pressure to be perfect there. And when I moved to Sedona, it was nowhere near the same. There's women here who don't wear deodorant. I'm not saying I do that same thing myself, but there's women are not here obsessed with beauty. They're obsessed with service. And so that I became that more so than obsessed about beauty. So it's really look at your environment, inside and outside. And if it's not serving you and if it's killing you, then maybe it's time for a change. So that's one big one.
I have to say real quick to interject something on that note, coming from Southern California myself. And also I think just the States, I just spent several months traveling around many places in the States compared to Costa Rica, where I'm spending part of the year. there is a really different vibe among women. And I know my wife absolutely loves it. It's probably like, other than warm water and good surf, it's probably our number one favorite thing about being here, is the social vibe, the community vibe is dramatically different. And it's much more harmonious. It's much more people rooting for each other, people wanting to be in connection with one another rather than in competition with one another. And I think you especially see it in the women. Like there's a closeness, there's a warmth, there's an open-heartedness. Whereas in, I would say, most places in the States, granted, there's of course individuals who are like this in the States and many places, but here it's overwhelmingly, people just extending that warmth and open-heartedness and wanting to love on each other, and not the competitive vibe is less than a tenth of what it is in most other places, and that's a really beautiful thing to see.
I love that area that you live in too, Costa Rica. That is absolutely the vibe I felt there.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get back to community. We have to get back to connection and collaboration and service, because when we're in competition with each other, it's because we are in competition within parts of ourselves and our past that we haven't yet forgiven. I mean, a lot of this is forgiveness work. You will be on the ground crying in the snot of your own tears and forgiveness. And it's beautiful, but like, that's why I say a hot masterpiece.
Yeah.
This metamorphosis is, you are allowed to be a hot mess and a masterpiece at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do this transformation and this work for yourself, it is an invitation for other women to do the same. And it really is how we plant new seeds when we're pulling these old weeds. And it's a trend. It's a non-toxic beauty trend that's catching on. Women are removing their breast implants all around the world. It's becoming a thing of our past. We're celebrating our, flat chestedness or, non-perfect boostiness. We're in celebration of that. So I love that about I love that about this movement. So you can watch my non-toxic beauty documentaries, a docuseries on David Icke's channel. You can go dive into a lot of that work. I have 11 parts actually in that one, where I dive into each one of these segments and I share alternatives. So you can go listen to those and the truth, the toxic truth about what's behind a lot of these things. You cannot do better unless you know better. And then I have checklists like this that I'm going to share this with you guys, and Ari has some gifts for you. These are the things to undo. I have a whole long list. When you start removing a lot of these toxic things in your lives, your body can heal itself. It starts to regenerate its own tissues when it's not under severe cell damage perception. And when you're rebuilding yourself from the inside, you are rebuilding your beauty, and beauty does come through and shine through in a posture state. So if you walk like you're beautiful, then you are commanding that other people see you the same way that you see yourself. I promise you that. It sounds yeah, whatever. But when you get to that point, you really can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And then building your beauty, you can be on a mission to build your beauty, but understanding that this too is that the same things that erode your body, a lot of these toxic beauty chemicals, are the same things that deplete your immune system. So many people are talking about, oh, I should take zinc and vitamin C and D and elderberry, and maybe you take the other things if you have the V thing. I don't know if we're censored on here, but there's a lot of things people say, what do I add? And the list is like forever long, but very few people are asking, what do I take away that's depleting my immune system? So the same things that build your beauty, energy, and immunity are the same things that will support you getting rid of disease. So when you build your beauty and you're doing collagen, you're doing vitamin C, you're also building your immune system. It's such a cool thing. And you talk about energy, Ari. So when you're building your energy and you're choosing these things that build that, you're also restoring your cells that could build your beauty, that could build your immunity. So you don't need to take a million different things for different purposes. When you realize your body is super simple and it's a self-healing mechanism, you take away the things that are blocking your ability to do just that. And then you add the things that give your body what it needs to build beauty, energy, and immunity. And you can have your energy back and you can reverse disease. No disease is permanent. We're just lied to you about that too.
Beautiful. I love that. So I know you have a couple gifts that we talked about prior to starting the recording that you wanted to offer my audience, which I'm very grateful for. So talk to us about that.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. So this book that I showed you guys earlier, Killer Breasts, this is not just a book for women who have breast implants. This is a book for women that have breasts. That's what I say, because I talk a lot about in here, you know, functional medicine labs, beyond blood testing, beyond just going to your doctor and saying what's wrong and fix me. There's a lot of proactive work that you can be taking, that the modern woman can be taking to reclaim her beauty and reclaim her own best doctor role for herself. So you become your own best friend with this book. So if you go to dianekaiser.com /KBB, which stands for Killer Breasts Book. So /KBB ARI, ARI, you guys will get this book. And then also over $500 worth of bonuses. One of which is my top 10 toxins ebook. I'll also put a link below that you guys can grab this book for free as well. Are toxins the root cause of your symptoms? And I have 10 of them in here. 2 of them are actually ones that you would never suspect. But I have a whole section in here on beauty toxins and things that you can do instead. These things are designed to blow your mind in a good way. So some of you might look at this list and go, oh my God, that's a lot of things. Well, look at all the potential there. That's what you're going to get with that book too. So it talks a lot about the silver fillings. And if you have mercury fillings, or if you ever had them, but never went back and cleansed your brain from a lot of that residue and that bleeding from the mercury and aluminum that are in those silver fillings, that is a major thing. It's a beauty blocker, a beauty robber. So it's really about going in and clearing your body. A lot of these things I talk about in that book, and how to do that practically and not dangerously, because a lot of people aren't talking about drainage. Don't detox before you drain. And a lot of people just, oh, what do I do to detox? And they take things, but I talk a lot about drainage in here. And drainage, when you focus on drainage in your lymphatics, that actually builds your beauty too. And it's amazing. When we take care of our bodies, we're also building our beauty at the same time. So I talk all about that in these 2 books. And both everything you can learn in those 2 books are things that will help your entire family. Because the women I help on this journey, their whole family starts to turn things around with their own health journeys. It's a really cool thing. So thank God you didn't know better. Maybe you made these toxic choices. Nobody told you differently. So there's no shame in that. But there is some forgiveness in ever thinking that you're beautiful as God made you, as unique as you are. Yeah, and that's also beautiful. Part of that book too.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Diane. Really a pleasure doing this. Likewise. I really enjoyed it. And just tell us one more time, what's the link that people can go to get those 2 books?
Yeah, the second link I have to make for you, but the first one is dianekaiser.com /KBBRE. And then the other one will be a top 10 toxins link that you guys can grab as well. Either one of those 2 things, if you're like, I don't want to buy the book, but you want to get the top 10 toxins one, just to get an idea of who I am and my journey and why I'm qualified to lead this work, you guys can download that book and then go from there.
Awesome. Okay. So we'll put a link on this podcast episode. We'll put this at theenergyblueprint.com /Diane Kaiser. Or you can just go to theenergyblueprint.com, click podcast, and then you can find the page from there. And then we'll put the links to get those 2 free books from Diane. So Diane, really, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. And I look forward to chatting with you again sometime soon, hopefully.
It's my honor, Ari. Thank you so much. And pura vida.
Yes, indeed. Back at you.
Thanks.
Hey there, this is Ari again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you found it valuable, please share it with your friends, share it with your family, help me get the word out there. Also, if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell to get notifications every time we release a new video or new episode of the podcast. And if you're listening to this, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for supporting my work at The Energy Blueprint. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you in the next